Welcome to the DevReady Podcast. My name's Andrew Romeo, and today I'm joined by my co-host Anthony Sapunzis. Firstly, I'm excited to share this podcast. DevReady's been a journey for our core business, which is E01 Technologies. DevReady is all about how we get clarity around a concept and an idea, but we also thought about what does it mean to be involved in a project. Are you, the customer, actually ready to jump into a technology project? What do you need to know before you do this? If you're a non-tech person, what are the gaps that you need to actually fill in to work with technology teams, to work with advisors, and to work with providers to actually get you to an outcome that you're looking for? Now, in the end, you may have a great idea within your business, or it might be a startup or something that you see as an opportunity to make a difference or an impact. So what do you do now? How do you validate that concept? How do you validate that idea? How do you ensure that you're delivering what your customers actually need and want? Once you're then at that point, how do you ensure that the technology that gets developed, made, and built for you is actually following the outcomes that you need and going to allow you to scale out that product and deliver value to your customers long term? Today, we're here and joined by Judy Celmins. Judy has been on a journey since back in 2011 where she first investigated what it might mean to develop a product that actually helps her business. She runs a marketing firm and basically looked at how could we actually establish a piece of technology that allowed us to survey and question people within rooms. So bringing people together, basically think of it as a form of Slack. So you bring people into a room, talk about a topic, and do some market research and surveying around that. Now, that technology went through a number of iterations. Through this podcast, you'll learn about some of the things that Judy learned across that journey, what went well, what didn't, things to avoid, and things to actually focus on if you're looking to jump into a technology project. Enjoy the podcast. First and foremost, I'd love to learn a little bit about your background and where you sort of come from, and then how you got involved in Engage4Insights and what that journey looked like.
Too easy. So, and I was thinking about myself, and I think really what, for me, is that I'm just a born marketer. I have always been excited about this journey of finding out what motivates people, what innovates, the innovations that you can bring in that excite people to go on a journey of buying your product or whatever. Mm-hmm. So then that's really driven all of my entrepreneurial journeys in my years, which have been a few.
So you've obviously gone from an entrepreneurial perspective. So marketing has really driven what you've done. So Engage4Insights is really all about market research and getting understanding why people buy. So can you tell us a little about what some of the services you do and offer?
It started off. Yeah, sorry. And it started off as market research, but the more we look into it, it's actually more about marketing. And I guess this comes from, it started because I was a research manager at a major media company some years ago. And part of my role was supplying quality data that the product team could use in their decision making. So clearly the information I was getting to them was critically important for those decisions. So as part of that role, we were, of course, these are the days when there's a huge amount of money in budgets and stuff, so we do it mostly on the phone and face-to-face, unlike today's online technology more. And then my job was, of course, I would listen in to the phone surveys, and I started to hear boredom in people's voices. They really care less about what we were asking them and what responses they were giving us. So, of course, that's a big problem, because if I'm relying on this data and we're trying to make some big decisions, then I've got to be able to go to the product team, yep, this is good, this is as good as it's going to get, etc. So we started experimenting back then with engagement. I'm talking about 20 years or so ago now, so it's a long time ago when people weren't really into this. Market research has always been quite a clinical process, rather than a creative one. Mm-hmm. So we experimented a lot with, I bring the team together, we talk about how could we improve this problem, and we'd come up with some ideas, we'd implement them with the team, then we'd look at the findings again, and then we'd experiment a bit more, and in the end we just developed a bit of a technique that brought, increased the attention to what we were doing, and we made it more about the respondent or the person. Mm-hmm. So, I hate even calling them respondents, by the way, because
it's a clinical term, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted to try and bring that creativity, things that were done in marketing terms, and we wanted to bring that more back into line with what we're doing in market research, so we could get that better quality result. And ultimately, it really did prove successful. You could hear, I listened back in on the calls, you could hear the engagement of it. And look, if you always get the odd person that's clearly not interested, they don't want to be rude. So I always gave permission for our interviewers to go, hey, thanks, that's the end of the survey. Wow, that was quick, wasn't it? And go, that person's not interested. And I never penalised anybody for doing that, because I just felt that was better for the quality anyway. But the point was that this journey took us on was that there's no way I could be involved in boring research ever again. I could never do it. It just didn't make any sense to us. So it really did start the journey that has become an adventure, of course, in developing software, and which I know we'll talk about, and making it more about the people. Engage4Insights was born.
Oh, very, very
Were those surveys voluntary, or were they paid people? Were people paid to do them?
No, that was in traditional, surveys were never incentivised in the old days. So, and we actually started introducing that 20 years ago, and I know we were one of the very first to start doing that. So we started doing prize draws, movie tickets, and those sorts of things, which of course we had access to being a media company. So that was all pretty easy to do. And those sorts of things do help. I mean, you have to be careful with that. There's, it's not quite as blanket as saying, because you don't want people to just do a survey because they're going to be paid or they're going to win something. So there is a fine line, but it's more than that. It's more than just rewarding someone. It's making them feel, in the end, as humans, we're actually wired to be in a community. We love to be involved in things. We don't want to be isolated, and that is actually one of the problems we've found with, again, surveys as such, and something that I'm still got in my head that I'd love to create one day, is making it more of an engagement and more community-based. Social media has highlighted that in a big way.
Yep, the influencers have their own little communities, and that's another avenue you can drive things through. Yeah, we had a client who we used to work with. He used to tell us about some focus groups that he'd go to, and he'd go to 3-4 a week, change his name, and just get the $50 from each one. So I can only imagine the quality of data that some people can provide you.
Yeah, and I have, and look, everyone has their own technique of recruiting for these sort of things, but we certainly were very fussy in trying not to get those type of people into your focus group, because they can drive the response. It's not market research is a science. It's not as black and white as sending out a cheap and dirty little tech survey, which has become really trendy now, and that I think actually is even damaging market research. One of my big bugbears at the moment is that tech is fantastic. It's come up with some amazing ways for us to reach out to people, but one of the challenges currently is that it's So I saw an article recently about a major retailer in New Zealand based. They are a global company, but they've introduced a little survey at the end of the transaction. So you put your credit card in, even at the store. In fact, I bought something from them and experienced it recently, and it really annoyed me. I put the credit card in, and they've got a survey I have to complete before I can finish my purchase. That really annoys me. So I actually just got angry, and I said, I want to cancel out of this. So she said, you can just push that button. I went, fine. So it's, and even if I did push the button, am I really involved in that process?
So it's forced upon the person actually buying, which isn't a great way to actually build a good experience for your shoppers, really. Especially if you're in the store, you'd think that's even worse.
Totally right. I just found it offensive, and because the other problem with And look, I understand a lot of execs are driven by KPIs these days. Their job depends on if they meet their KPIs. And unfortunately, a lot of that's also the KPIs are coming from surveys like NPS and satisfaction scores. But, there are also staff that could be sacked because their satisfaction scores weren't high enough. I've had instances where dealing with, I had a removalist company, I've moved a few times, and the guy said to me, I really need you to fill it out, and if you don't give me a good rating, I'm going to get sacked. And you go, oh my God, so he's actually begging me to fill out the survey and give him a good tick so that he can keep his job. I mean, is that actually really
That's
beneficial?
What we're seeing everywhere. I've just experienced that myself. Like, you get the sort of question saying, oh, can you rate me a 9 or a 10? Otherwise, or just if you're happy, give me a 9 or a 10. That helps me. It's like, what's the point of actually doing that if you're going to be guiding the person to do X, Y, Z? I think you're losing the benefit of actually asking the survey or the question. So it doesn't make any sense. But if you're driving KPIs based on those numbers, people are going to put in these questions and these prompts to say, please help me.
They'll game the process.
Yes.
So anyway, the bottom line is that I guess now that we tend to avoid, we just don't do those sorts of things. We just don't want to get involved in that sort of research. I still, in some of our clients, they use large market research firms that actually do the questionnaire, and we just get supplied the data and we start doing the analysis for them. And I have to say, every time we just about tear our hair out and go, oh, why would they even ask that question? And I can actually, because I do a lot of open-ended evaluations, so it's one of the jobs most people hate, but I actually really like it because I get to read and I'm laughing the whole time. I'm reading these crazy comments that people make and you go, oh, look at this is crazy. But you start to really form a story, and that's actually what's really critical in our marketing now is it's all about stories. It's about the story you unearth from the data. It's not just numbers. If you can find the story, find the real understanding and passion, then you're in a completely different wavelength with your clients, and you're opening whole many new opportunities that you never knew existed.
Okay.
So the story helps guide the innovation moving forward and what they uncover for their new outcomes and goals.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
You talk a lot about fun and creativity in your research and your surveys. So I want to sort of pare it back and get more of a better understanding of that. And then you've obviously built some technology around that sort of aspect of it and how you're driving that through. So take us a little bit on that journey around what fun means and
how do you make
some
it more
examples of what fun is, and then we'll go into that. So that's
how does it become more engaging for people?
Yep. No, so thank you for the question, because it's and it's actually not a simple black and white question. So or answer rather. It starts from every single interaction you have with your audience. So if you are if you're sending out, let me put it this way, if you're a marketing person and you're sending out an EDM, you're not going to put something that's not directed towards the target, that's not in their language, that's not about enticing them to read your message and get involved in your business. Yet, if we send an invitation via email for research, we all of a sudden get clinical about it.
Okay, get it.
And I even read, like things like, I actually did one, I haven't got the example sitting in front of me, but I got an email, and I'm going to pick on I could pick on any number of businesses and they all say the same thing. But the one that's stuck in my mind is LastPass. I did a free trial with LastPass, and they sent me at the end of the free trial, I didn't upgrade, and because I had the free version anyway, and it suited my needs. And they sent me an email saying, thanks for giving LastPass a try. Can you do our survey to help us? And I went, why?
And there's no buy-in for you, right? So
and so you know what, it comes from there. So to make it fun and engaging for people, you start by the first invitation. Now, he could have turned that around. He could have even done a little cute little video from the founder, and it could have been, hi, the first thing, he didn't even attention it to me. He said, hi there.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
they know who I am because I signed up for a free trial and they emailed it to me. So firstly, it sort of said, hi, Judy.
Yes.
This is basic EDM stuff, right? And I'll guarantee you that in their normal marketing communications, they would never, ever have done that. But for some reason, there's this separation that market research has to be technical and clinical and not creative. Totally the opposite. You know, in some of our media clients, we had some real fun with the invitations. And of course, with media, we've got some different opportunities than what many small businesses have, but it doesn't mean you can't be creative. So one of them used a comedy writer. And oh my God, the invitation was so funny and so on target. It hit the nail, you know, like I can't even repeat it. It was real bro language. And so, you know, it was totally there.
When you think about it from that perspective, you are looking to engage those people, right? So if you look at an example of against the last pass, that's the general way it's been done. So what would the engagement numbers be like if you go and do something a bit more creative and fun? And have you seen a big shift? Is it drastic numbers that
a
you would
GIF
see?
in the email or something
just
to make someone laugh?
Yeah, exactly. So what sort of numbers might you see? Do you sort of differences?
Well, even with our software that we design, so, you know, there's so many challenges within market research that, you know, it's people drop out, you go on a panel. So people will invite you regularly to do a survey. And quite frankly, after a few, you're pretty over it, unless you're making money, like you mentioned with your first friend who's doing focus groups. So, you know, unless you're just doing it because it's part of your job, and most people don't, by the way, they're getting a little couple of extra bucks or whatever, they might have a chance to win something. So the point is that there's nothing in it for them. So your dropout rate of panels is substantial. The other problem that is pretty big for the industry, and clearly for businesses, because if you're not getting the right data, then, you know, that's in the end, it affects your decision making, is the fact that so many people don't complete the survey. So, you know, another example, last week I got a survey from a supermarket chain here. They're using a very big global company to run the software program. I'm very aware of it. And they talk about doing things that are engaging and community-based. I got halfway through it and I thought, this is boring. It's nothing, and I'm open-minded, and I try and put myself in the shoes of the people doing it, because I think that's really important, and that's part of the UX of software design too. So it goes in the same place, right? And so I'm a great one. Test stuff on me because I'm super critical, but I'm not abnormal, you know. So this is what happens, is that people get halfway and think, oh, God, I'm over this. How much longer? And you might go, oh, I'm only halfway. Oh, Lordy, have I got another 10 minutes to waste? Or do I even want to waste another minute of my time? What's in it for me? So even if you get to the end, so drop-off is a huge problem. So when you take into the consideration that maybe 1, 5, 10%, depending on how lucky you are, open your email to start with.
Yeah, then it's not a big number, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not. We're not talking huge.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and if you've got a time frame on it, if maybe you want to do it, you know, on a, you know, in LastPass's example, okay, so they've got, at the end of the free trial, they obviously have a standard email that goes out to everybody within 3 or 4 days of completing, get them to fill out a survey. I mean, I could actually visualise the exec meeting. We're not getting the turnaround to premiums. Quickly, find out what's going on, send out a survey, you know, and so they patch together, you know, one of the quick tools that you can get online, put out a survey. It's and it's all about them. They haven't given any thought at all into what you're going to get out of it or the people experiencing it. So when it comes to answering your question about what makes it fun, it's a package of things. It's thinking about, I love thinking about gamification.
Okay.
So, you know, using what gamers do, and they're getting better and better at it. So you can use some of the things that they've learnt in gaming. How have they managed to keep people using the software? How do they get them to go on to the next level? How does it feel when you're playing a game? Are you on your own in isolation, or are you part of a team playing it? And there's some really cool things because I confess to the world now that I do play the odd game on the phone, but again, I like to do it, and I'll go, oh, how have they done that, and why are they doing that? They've obviously good stats behind that. So I think as market researchers, we should be looking at those sorts of industries more. Social media has taught us an enormous amount about, how we like to engage. If you think of all the different ways that people enjoy communicating, and they just go online and spend hours just reading what other people are doing.
Yeah, or watching them play games.
Yeah,
yes,
it just says so much about the way we're wired as humans, and when you start understanding that, then you can communicate with them better. And in the end, research is about communicating with people.
Okay, so in essence, you're looking at, from your perspective, it's more about a communication engagement to get actually quality survey and people into the survey, rather than just throwing out, here's 10 questions, good luck, please add some feedback, and let's hope somebody answers these things.
I think we did something like that on Monday.
Oh,
for one of our products, we just added a survey email to the end of a support ticket just so we can get some feedback.
Yeah, great feedback in terms of what we could do differently.
We've really got some pointers now, I think.
Yeah, no, very good. So, in essence...
Well, that's what everyone's been doing for so long. So, I guess what we feel our role is to try and tell people that just please stop doing that, because one, it actually does you no favours at all if you send it to people that actually like you and think of you. So another thought process, I remember a business guy once saying to me, the lasting impression that your customer has of you is the last impact. So if you've had an interaction with them, they've maybe done business with you, that you all got on well and all that sort of stuff, then you go and send them a survey.
Yes.
So what's the last impact they've had from your business? It's the survey.
Yeah,
that's that aligns to like a sporting world, for example. So you're only as good as your last game. It's the same thing in business. So you're only as good as your last communication, impact, result. So that sort of ties hand in hand, really.
Yeah. And I think if we just remember that and stop and think before we go and send some quick fix survey without thinking about the person that's answering this question, what's their life like? I mean, I often think of it like this, that, if you're sending a survey and you choose a time to send it, if your target audience is, let's pick an easy one, so your target audience is mums with kids, you wouldn't send it at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you wouldn't send it at 4 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right? Because they're picking up and dropping off kids, and but you might, if they're a stay-at-home mum, you might send it at 10:30, because it could be a perfect opportunity to sit down with a cuppa, and you would say that in your invitation. So you would go, kids have just gone to school, sit down and have some fun with us. Let's and participate in this little thing, and you make it about them. And you
in essence, it's more of an engagement and sales process to get people into a survey, really, what you're saying.
It's you're not selling them into the survey.
Something, and you're attracting them in, and you're engaging, getting into your target market. Hopefully, your target market based on your product. So, in essence, taking that information through to surveying. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
We're trying to follow a tiny bit of that when we send our communication on LinkedIn.
Yes.
We try and target it around when someone's going to have their coffee break or their smoko break.
Yeah.
And we just try and push something then, because that's when they're going to be on their phone, maybe looking at it. Not at 9 o'clock as soon as they get in and they get inundated with whatever else they have to do for the day.
Yeah. No,
but that's just one small aspect that we follow, but you're opening up our eyes to a lot more.
So Judy, just paring back and leaning towards, from a technology perspective, let's dive a little bit more in there. Now, obviously, you mentioned to us previously to this conversation around, you've gone down the path and developed some technology to help assist with what you're doing from a market research piece, a surveying piece. Can you explain a little bit about what your current product is, and then we'll explore a little bit of that journey and how you went there.
Yeah, why you went down the custom route rather than what's available.
So basically, there was nothing else available. You know, we did look around we looked around at a whole pile of different options, but in the space that we felt was right for where we wanted to go and the insights that we wanted to gather, which was more of that community-based stuff, and making people feel engaged. There just really wasn't a tool out there. You know, so Slack wasn't even invented then.
Yeah, so not much back in 2011.
No, so very, very early days. And I remember the first development team, I went to see a guy who built a website for, I mean, I knew nothing about this, right? Yep. So you just have this idea in your head. And I remember a friend of ours said, dream big, Jude, you can create anything these days. So, you know, you start, and I'm a creative, so it was really easy to dream and think big. And then, so I went to see this guy who developed a website, and he just shook his head and he went, way over my pay grade, Jude. No way. And he was really sweet, and he said, oh, it'll cost you at least $100,000. And like, by the way, if it cost us $100,000, I would be just kissing the sky.
I'd be delighted just that sort of thing.
But it was, you know, so that was our first experience. And then someone else we met introduced us to another development company in Adelaide.
Yes.
And really nice guys. And they got really excited. And because as I said, we were pretty much talking about developing the first Slack at that stage, or a version of.
Okay.
And everybody was talking about it. Everyone was, because this is before Messenger, you know, there just wasn't the technology. So I remember they decided they would try building it with Node.js, and they gave us the rationale behind it. So they, at the time, said we could do it as a fixed bid, which was really crazy now that I know all about this stuff. I know that you guys would just be freaking out.
That's how most things were done. It was, let's see what you want to do. Like you said, the industry has basically evolved, and everything pretty much in 2011 was fixed bid, waterfall model. Let's scope out something that's maybe 6 months of work, 12 months of work, and hope for the best. Yeah. And that's really where the industry started, and it's obviously evolved from there, but you obviously walked right into it.
Yeah, and the only other way you're going to get changes happening is start raising change requests and then get add-on costs on top of that, and then that just upsets the customer most of the time.
Yes.
Absolutely. But, you know, I guess, again, because we had no idea, so we're complete novices, and there's not even much online that you could search for how to do this thing. And so we actually had a friend who was pretty high up in Nokia at the time as a U-Butte tech, and he just shook his head and said, oh, it's wild. So it was just sort of one of those things where you went, okay, well, let's just try this out and trust people, because that's what you have to do. So the bottom line was it didn't go well. And because, I mean, they clearly got excited because they could see the huge potential if we were able to crack this code of bringing, because the brief really was, we want to bring as many people around the globe as possible, like anywhere from all over the world, into a room to be able to chat to each other.
Okay, so it was Slack.
That was a broad sense of the brief. Yes. And of course their brains is going, oh my God, this could be like a huge collaborative tool. And in their heads, I know that they were dreaming of what Slack became. But, you know, for the 137,000 they quoted us.
Okay.
3 months later, we had nothing, and we'd gone through all of that 137,000, and we still had nothing. We, you know, they were about to go broke because they just couldn't afford to keep bankrolling it, but they'd made a commitment. In the end, to be honest, I knew they were going to be unable to deliver what we needed. So, you know, I got them out of their contract. It was not going to work. I guess I'm a bit of maybe I'm crazy, but to me, it's got to work. The relationship's got to work both ways.
That's a key point, Judy. Like, when you're talking about something like technology, it is a risk from all parties, because generally you're touching on uncharted territory. So in that instance, there was nothing. It was uncharted territory, and it was a concept that was brought apart. So when you're sort of jumping into a project, some awareness around technology is clearly one. It can be new and innovative. So as a customer walking into that relationship, just be aware of that, because if it's been done before, you probably wouldn't be building it. And then two, from a company providing that service, just be aware that yes, the customer needs to be taken through a process and a journey of, okay, we're here, this is where we want to be, but let's take some incremental steps, and that's probably not where you sort of started, and that's probably what you've learnt along the journey. So after that experience, what did you do?
Tore our hair out, swore a lot, all of the above.
Was there anything you could work with?
Yeah, a little bit, not much.
All right.
And so I actually got a phone. I actually ended up taking over project management, because that was another thing I learned a lot about.
Yes.
And again, we're talking very early days of the industry. So I'm not picking on people, because, as you said, it's all early days and the industry's evolved. But one of the guys that was one of the key engineers, coders that was working on it, and I got on really well with him, and I only heard it was going bad when he rang me from the car first thing in the morning, and he said, "I'm just ringing you from the car park of my new job."
Oh.
And I went, WTF, like, huh?
Oh, God. That's a great way to start the morning.
Yeah, and he said, "I haven't been paid in a month."
Oh, shit. Okay.
And I just can't survive. I've used up my savings to try and keep working with you and with the company he was with, but, in the end, I can't. And I said, "Oh, no, I don't work that way." So I paid him for a start.
Okay.
So I just don't do that. I just don't feel like that's, again, people maybe call me crazy, but I just don't do that. So, and then I employed him because he'd already taken a full-time job, which was a bummer, because had he come to me first,
yes,
I would have said, "Oh, well, that's easy, just come and work for me, and we'll do it together."
Yeah.
But he'd not been paid. He'd gone through all of that, and out of desperation gone and taken another job. So he started working with us after hours to try and work it out. As I said, I think I might have mentioned early on, we used Node.js, which was very new at the time.
Yeah, it would have been early in 2011, yes.
Yeah, so and just didn't hold up for us. We got it to running an experiment, but during the process, it just kept falling over, and oh my God, this is just too stressful. Just don't need the stress. It's got to work, or it doesn't work.
Yep.
So, and then we nearly walked away from the whole thing, thinking this is going to work. And then I tried really hard to ring. At that stage, again, it's naivety in my experience. So, I rang a couple of companies, half-done code that didn't work. No way in the world were they going to touch it.
Yeah, everyone would be weary about that.
Yeah, there's obviously that. What are we getting ourselves into type thinking. So
exactly, absolutely. So, and clearly before I met you guys, so it's but. We did actually start working with a development team in Europe.
Yes.
In fact, in Latvia, and my husband's of Latvian descent, so that was somewhat drove it.
Yes. Sometimes it's what we know, or who we know, and not what we know. So, that sort of drives the decisions you make. So, yeah.
It does in the end, and I guess because we had relatives in Latvia, like, I looked at India and, Asia and things, and it just felt, I don't know, it just didn't feel right to me. It's probably the way I can explain that. And again, without experience, I thought, I'm struggling enough to get someone in Australia to do this. Why would I go to someone I can't understand?
Yeah, going in blind makes it
just
difficult.
taking a step back. So how long did it take you to get to this position? So you've obviously developed the software, not working, got on with this guy working after hours.
This would be about over 18 months.
So 18 months. Okay, so you come to the decision that we need a team, and we've gone to Latvia now, and we're exploring this. Okay.
So it'd be early 2013.
Yes.
And so I try not to add it up, actually. It's been a bit of a scary process. But and all through this, I kept going back to to my partner in life and business, Eric, and I'd say, are you sure this is what we actually want to do? And I'd send him off to do another business case for me. So I guess this comes back to one of my marketing and business background, is that, I need to know, is there a market out there? Because we talked to businesses about it, but it was so new and so foreign that they just go, wow, sounds interesting, in the end. That was all I get.
Did you actually have the people there to end up using it at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's really hard. I remember someone not that long ago actually, telling me, I built a new CRM, and they said, well, we just did this and we tested it. And I thought, CRM's different because everyone knows what a CRM does.
Yes, there's actually awareness as to what you're building, right?
Yeah. So, and if you're going to a niche market with a CRM, well, that's easy. You just go to that niche market and go, what do you need your CRM to do? Well, actually, quite frankly, that's shit easy. Excuse the language. I would do something that simple.
It's very straightforward.
But we were doing something that was totally out there and just sounded weird in many, many ways. But we kept reading blogs and stories from people that kept saying, you've got to listen and talk to your customers. And then they'd be asked, well, how do you do it? Not really sure. Just go and approach them in the street. You can get a survey and stand there on the street corner or in the shopping centre, and you go, oh my goodness, there is a better way, guys.
There must be a better way than that, right?
People still do that, and
they do.
It doesn't work. I don't know how many people I have to knock back when I'm walking around.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, you were starting to see some online focus groups coming out, but again, not driven on engagement at all. So that wasn't going to work for us. So yeah, in the end, we did use the Latvian team, and after our experiences, the one thing I can say that was great was certainly their work ethic and their attention to detail. What they did was fabulous, but it's still a journey that cost us way more than it, really should have done, to be honest. But
how did you find communicating with that team? I know there's a language barrier, but not having a technical background, translating what you're after to clear enough specification for them to understand to deliver what you're after.
Great question, Anthony. And I think this is where I underestimated again my naivety. So it's like you think you can speak English, you can communicate. I can even almost speak text talk. Yes. So I'm a communicator. So you don't think it's that hard. And I would write out what I expected something to do, but it was nowhere near the style that they needed it to be in. And that was a massive learning curve. So I do remember one instance where we had the code audited afterwards, and I'm digressing slightly, but it relates back. The guy said to me, he's looked at the code and he's gone, wow, how did they do this? And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, why would they? I said, well, I just said I want this.
Yes.
And I'd give them what it had to do. That was my outcome that I wanted to see, something that would maybe frustrate me with using a particular thing. And the guy said to me, MailChimp hasn't even worked out how to do this, and you guys have nailed it. This is amazing stuff. But again, because, as you said, Anthony, I didn't know what I was asking for. Yes. I didn't realise I was asking for the Taj Mahal. I actually thought I wanted something to work.
Yeah.
So on that relationship, how did you approach that? So when you went to this Latvian team, you found a team. How did you go about finding a team, one? And then two, what was the working relationship? You probably learned from, let's not go down the fixed price route, or how did you actually approach it the next time?
Yeah, so a combined thing. So firstly, finding someone who would take on our code, because I wasn't prepared to throw $100,000 in the bin. That was, that's my practical side of me just says I just can't stomach doing that.
Yeah, well, there's an investment being put in that you have to try and leverage as much as you can.
Yes.
Yeah. But what I guess I didn't understand, and if I understood now, is that you could use the learnings from that and in fact make it better. And that is, I think, one of my bigger mistakes. So I paid them on an hourly basis to fix the bugs with what we currently had.
Yes.
Now that ended up probably costing us another $100,000.
Just to fix bugs. Yeah, okay.
Just to fix it.
Yes.
And in the end, it was still Node.js and didn't hold up.
Okay.
So we ended up having to throw it all in the bin anyway and start again. So but you don't see that when, you're sitting there paying the bills and you just go, I've got this thing, it must be worth something. Like I've got the shell of a house.
Yes.
Why can't I put a couple of more supporting walls on it and make it stand up without falling over, for example,
Just quickly, did you change technology?
We did, yeah. We actually went to Angular in the end.
Okay.
So we kept Node for some aspects.
Yes.
So, we did actually, we successfully got money through the R&D in Australia. And because what we were trying to do was so new at that time, as I said, there was nothing like it. So, but that doesn't help when you keep, and of course R&D, if anyone's gone through the R&D process, they actually want you to experiment and fail. They like failure.
Yeah, they appreciate that. That's what R&D is all about.
You learn from
it. You start with a hypothesis, we can do this might be able to happen, and then you drive and learn.
And then what learnings do you take, and then how do you reframe the next outcomes that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, exactly. So going through that, and I think that, so there were some challenges of using an offshore team, and one of them was certainly the R&D process in Australia, having a team that understood that process better in Australia. I think, again, I've got the most amazing degree now that's cost me a fortune, but what goes on in my head now, and the knowledge I've got and how I would approach it next time is completely different. I wouldn't hesitate to use the findings and ditch it and start again, and that I think was what not got explained to me early on. It was like, I remember ringing a company in Sydney at the time when I was looking for a development company, and they said $250 an hour plus project management, and we start all over again. Nothing you've got's useful.
And did they look at it or even understand that?
No, they weren't even interested.
So weren't interested. Yeah.
They just weren't interested.
They were trying to price you out of the project.
Yeah. That's probably the mentality, and I don't appreciate that mentality, because in the end, you're someone that's looking for help. You're looking out for help, and people come to you, and it's like, how do you guide them? So, like, we're approached from time to time with the same sort of thing. It's still happening today, Judy. It's not just you did this in 2011, and the scary thing is it's still happening today.
We've had 3 people in a similar situation in the past month.
Yes. So it's pretty scary to think what's going on in the marketplace, and they haven't had that experience that you've had. So they're basically going in with the same blinkers on, thinking, okay, this could be easy. Let's put $100,000 into this, and we'll get a result in the end. And they don't really get anywhere. And
then even from a development business approach, getting someone else's code is always going to be a hassle.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
You don't know what it's done, how they did things, what their thought process was, especially if there's no documentation behind it, which there rarely is.
Yes.
Trying to understand how to piece it together, that's a process in its own, and it's another project before the project actually has to start from our end.
Yeah. So not having a company even looking at what you'd had is probably, just not interested. But it's still happening today, where people just ignore, from a development perspective, just don't want to get involved in that rescue project, which people coin it, and don't want to help. So in the end, I think it's...
I'm curious though, Andrew, is it because, from your perspective, sorry, I'm turning the interview back the other way.
No, that's fine,
From your perspective, is that because, you look at some people and you decide that, they're not really going to have what it takes to make this happen? I mean, have they not got the commitment within themselves or the company? Or, why would you turn back? Why would you not help people through the process? Is it too hard?
From my perspective, there are instances where some people are just not open to going down the barrier of the education, so they don't really want to take on the advice, and sometimes it just becomes too hard from the perspective of, okay, you've gone that, like in a great example, I can give you about a month ago, I had a lady approach us. She got a few quotes on a project, ended up 80, 100 grand mark, right? So she went down that path already, which had a conversation around that. She ended up trying to do things on her own accord, put about 15, 20 grand into it.
So she found someone who would do it for
yes.
16, 17,000,
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
And she went with them instead of the people that then provided
Yes.
an $80,000 quote. So already there should have been some red
Some
flags,
red
that were
flags
going
coming
off.
up, right? And then
It's a quarter of the cost.
Yeah.
there's no, and then she's coming to looking for help, and they're not willing to take on any advice. The advice that we gave was, okay, let's just get a grip on where your current project is, what we can keep, what we can't, and get an understanding of that. And she's coming from a perspective of, I want this, this, and this done, and this is this is the time frame I need it done by, and it's basically the terms of push forward. So
And
I
it's
think
not
it's
even
the
a
naivety
list of
around
things to work on. She said,
yes,
I want feature corrections.
yes,
And that was how she defined it.
yeah, yeah,
So it can't get any more open-ended than that.
yeah. So
Yeah, interesting. When I met someone a couple of years back, and she was she'd appointed some development team to do an app for her,
yes,
and so she was dying to pick my brain on obviously my journey and
Yes.
how I could help her, and I started laying out a few ideas, and she's sitting there and her eyes are getting broader, and she's just I could see the panic rising
yeah,
in her.
because there's so many
She'd
unknowns.
already lost 40k put 40k into it.
Yep.
And I just, we've just talked about, well, come up with a budget that you're prepared to lose.
Yes.
It doesn't, but also understanding exactly what you're talking about. Maybe we should write a joint book.
Yeah, potentially. There's plenty of information here.
We could tackle it from both
And
angles.
then they could take the other angle. We've had a group out of Singapore that are developing a product overseas that have approached us recently. And they've been open to advice because they can see that what they've done is not working.
They understand the limitations. They don't know anything about tech. They don't know how
Yes.
to manage the project.
Yes.
They know that they've got challenges, and
Yes.
we've come on board as an advisor to
Yeah.
help them with the
But-
process.
In essence, you've got to be prepared to walk into a relationship
Yeah.
and help the person or the company for what they need. Sometimes, like in business, we just throw people our services and what we do. In essence, they needed just someone coming in and just helping them frame a project management at this stage. Yeah, so the developers that they're working with, let's continue down that path because we don't know what we don't know right now. And we'll assess it and see how it plays out.
Try and manage
And
the
if
process.
it is untenable, that's fine. We'll look at another angle. But if we can make it manageable work, that's probably the place that's going to solve the problem right now. So, in essence, we throw on our services to people generally as businesses, and that's probably a mistake that businesses made. And we've done that in the past where we said, oh, we don't do that, we do this. But the realization is the customer's on a journey and they're in a place where they're stuck. And the problem we're trying to solve here is how do we get them to the next step? And if you take that realization into anything, what's your outcome, what's the next step, and how do you get there? That's really where you want to start it. So
As long as they're willing and want to feel the same way from their end.
yeah,
Because it's not going to go ahead because either the development company doesn't want to get involved with
Yes.
something that they're not aware of,
yes,
or the customer is coming to you, thinks they know everything,
Yeah.
and that's why they're in that position they're in, but they don't want to change anything they've done. And if you don't change, how are you going to improve?
yes. And I think what I can learn from you is you've got a learning mindset. So the mindset from your perspective is, all right, you've come a long way. You've invested $120,000 into your first project, but you've got another 100 grand just to fix bugs, and then I can't imagine how much else you spent on this thing. So
Thank you.
yes, and it keeps growing. Yeah, but the experience that you've gathered from it, where are you now? So what position are you in now, and where does that currently sit?
So the software is complete and works and is absolutely sensational. It's doing everything we want it to do.
Perfect.
In the end, I guess for us the winning was, for us actually, I can't tell you how exciting the very, very first session, and in fact every session is for us when we get a group of people and they start chatting and then at the end they actually thank us for making it so much fun. And we now have, it's interesting because we've got we call it like an avatar GPS. We've got this system inside where we know where they are. So they can wander through the room. It's a virtual room. Okay. They can wander through each room, which is full of its own multimedia in each room. and a different discussion they had. So you have a different discussion in each room, and it's like having a wandering date. You know, you walk through a hotel and each room is a different surprise. So you walk into each room and you discover something new. And so we can track and see where everybody is. And it's so much fun sitting there watching where people are, how they're interacting. We did a study not so long ago, and it was clear that we were their entertainment. And they clearly had it on a tablet or their mobile. And they may have even been watching telly in the background or whatever they're doing. And they're involved and they're reading everyone else's comments and getting involved in it and having an open discussion. It's interesting, we did one in Ireland ages ago, and the Irish are just as funny as they write, just as funny as they sound and make jokes as funny as glorious. But they're literally, I figured if clearly we make it anonymous because it's about security and privacy, and that's part of why we don't use social media style connections and things. But I swear if we'd let them know who they were, they all would have been down the pub having a Guinness. Yeah. So they were just having so much fun. So that's really cool. I remember presenting to a market research, traditional market research company, and we listed all the rave reviews we get from people using the platform, and they just looked at us and they, you don't get that with research. Well, we do. So
you've created, would you say, a competitive advantage in your space with what you're doing differently?
Yeah, it's just actually, you know what it is? It's thinking about the people involved in it. You know, too much research, in my opinion, and it has to be this way. You look at it from the client's perspective, you understand what the client's trying to achieve from the answers and its objectives, and you write down the questions, but you never ever, have I ever heard a market research company go, well, your respondents, your users, your customers, the people that are actually using this and are giving you the answers, then no one thinks about them and their journey and their experience. Because there's an old saying that I worked in a radio network a very, very time ago, and the old saying was, if your listeners are happy, your clients are going to be on board. So and it's the same thing with this. If you have got your audience participating in your survey and they're loving it, then you're going to get the results. It's really very, very simple. But we've looked at it again from this clinical, researchy, scientific perspective all the time. So that really is what we changed, and I'm still determined that we're going to change it with other types of surveys as well.
It's brilliant what you've actually achieved and come along that journey. Just to pare back a little bit, basically we've developed just over the last 3 to 4 years through our learning and the process that we've had a product which is really a consulting piece of work, which is DevReady, and that really drives in on the researching with stakeholders. We are engaging with a couple of people now that look at more of and I think we have to have a chat with you a little bit around the actual user research and then more diving in on that perspective. So it could be a conversation we can have later on, how we add more value into that offering. So it's all about getting real clarity around outcomes driven focus, because generally people come to you and like you said, you're trying to develop a product, but what is the outcome of that product? And then that product that you're trying to develop may not even be what you need to deliver upon that outcome. So it's really early stage, getting an understanding of the business, the challenges they may have, building awareness in on that, and that's really what that process is all about, getting it quickly to an MVP. So that's what we've framed and what works well for us in terms of how we educate our customers, and that's the question I sort of had for you. One of the key pivotal points in what we do with DevReady is always looking at the vision of what your product may look like, and basically getting a good understanding and clear picture. Now, back in 2011, you had a vision, and I like to ask this question because generally we have an outcome that we're trying to achieve, but what we imagine that to be within software is not necessarily what comes out at the end as the best result. So So from 2011, you look way back there. You had a vision, you had an idea of this collaborative room where people would come in and you have some sort of fun market research. Where you are today, how would you describe the differences and the learnings that you had through the journey from where you thought you'd be to where you are now?
I think I wouldn't say polar opposite, but it's certainly, and for a bucket load of reasons, it changes.
Yes.
And it should change.
Yes.
I actually really like the Slack story, and I know that you guys know this, but because they were developing some completely different product, and it didn't work, and then they'd actually developed Slack as a way of communicating within the team, and then they turned that into a product. So consequently, that rest is history. But and things do change, and you change by, I guess. A simple example would be when we started, MailChimp wasn't very good. Okay. And MailChimp was pretty much as good as it was.
Yes. Yeah, dominating the market, and
that's
one of the main ones you would use.
That was all.
We signed up to it back then. So we had our 700 newsletters from.
So, and then you add to that the clients that we were working with, which were predominantly media companies, were completely disorganised. So things like an EDM and in any sort of email mailing system wasn't heard of. So when we went to them originally and said, well, we need to email out to your listeners to get some feedback, they go, oh God, how's that going to automate? So we actually had to build our own MailChimp inside the system.
Oh, there you go.
That's not needed now.
That's
right.
So
we rarely use that whole side, which was a massive part of our development.
Okay.
So we then tacked on, in fact, very much at the last few months before development, we realised that the market had changed, and we were so absorbed in the product that you don't see what else is going on around you often. So, and we realised that, since we'd started this whole thing, things have so much changed. So we actually now developed an iteration of it so that you could access the room via a URL, and made that whole thing so much simpler, and with Zapier integration as well that we had to introduce so that it could hook into whatever system they used, whether that's Keep and HubSpot or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's that changed completely.
Yes.
The actual guidelines, the actual room, the virtual room that we used didn't change very much, because still no one's doing it. I mean, I think what blew us away was that, 2000, and in fact, it was 2009 when we developed the concept, and Eric started talking about this crazy idea, and I thought he was off the planet, and I'd send him back to his little team and go and have another drink, dear, or play your instrument again, because he's a trumpeter. So go and blow the trumpet a bit, because I think you need to let off some steam. It's gone a bit mad in there. So, but then, a couple of years later, and he wanted to keep going with this concept, and we really thought, this is a no-brainer. This is so obvious that someone's going to beat us. And we kept thinking, one of the big guys will get in there first, and so that did form a big part of our process to market at the early stages, because it's not patentable. It's an idea. You can copyright anything, but you just change a few things and anyone can do it.
That's exactly right. That's why we have 2,500 CRMs these days.
Exactly.
There's not much you can do. Yeah. So would you say the objective never changed? Your outcome, would you say your outcome never changed? What your core outcome you were focusing on, what you want to live?
It didn't. No, because really, in the end, what we were looking for was a place that, people could gather to talk about a brand as part of the brand's team, and enjoy the experience. And that's exactly what we started with, and that's exactly what we ended up with. And ironically, we're still the only one that does it with engagement.
Okay.
But the way it's been done has changed over time and leveraged with new technology.
Where I'm sort of leading that is your vision and your big picture is where you need to start your product from. So What will change is all the functionality around it. So when you're developing a product, and probably you can give me sort of your feedback on this, my sort of thinking is, like anything, we need a goal, we need a vision, we need an objective. If we don't have that, and we've just got this functional driven development, we end up in going out no man's land. So if we start off with a basic goal and picture of what we want, all the functionality to get there may change, and in your instance it has. So your email marketing component's completely changed. The technology behind what you're doing has completely changed, but still you're focused on delivering that outcome, and you've let the rest evolve and the learning evolve and change the way you've done it. So that's the learning that I've had and what actually works in development. So love to hear your feedback if that makes sense from your perspective.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if you've got, if your core premises is, well, certainly for us, our core premise never changed.
Yes.
But the delivery to market has definitely changed.
Yeah.
It's gone through many, many iterations, and I think that's true for any business anyway.
Yes.
Because, and the market changes, expectations change, other technology comes on board. Other priorities happen in business, and so I think one of the big things for market research and us is that it's seen as often as a nice to have, not a must have, and our form of research is even more of a nice to have. Now, in our opinion, it's a must have, but we've got to communicate that, and that is it comes down to a communication challenge. And an education challenge, because we're so used to just sending out something that doesn't involve the audience. We've been, quite frankly, happy to bore our audience and to just accept that that's the way it is. So it really is educating people. Even actually, I really like it's. So many people say they're customer centric, but then you dig a bit deeper and then they've put a funnel survey in. You go, I'm sorry, that's not customer centric. It means you're finding out information. You think you're finding out information about your customer to make you better in the customer's eye, but in the process of doing that, you're upsetting your customer. Is that what is that really your motivation? Jeff Bezos said, the amount of startups he talks to, and he said they believe they're customer focused. But he said when you talk to them, they're actually competitor focused. And what I mean by that is that they're focused on features. If your whole life is chasing to have another feature that's better than your competitor, then it's a competitor focus. It's not about that. It's about what are the features that your customers are actually using? What features make their life better? Well, how do they use your product in order to make their life better or their experience with you more engaging and better? So you can't find that information by having a survey.
What you're sort of alluding to there is, and I think the world's starting to wake up, and because of social media, we're in a place where customers now and people can actually give immediate feedback on service, on quality of product, and we've only entered this world recently, so we've only been in it for 5, 6, 7 years.
Their voice is limited to their physical friends anymore.
Yeah, so people and businesses are starting to understand that customers are important, but I think your point's really valid, where we basically still can be tied into the fact that if we're competing with direct competitors, what can we build to be a little bit better than them? Rather than just going direct to the customer and saying, what do you actually need, and learning from that experience. But sometimes a customer doesn't know what they need, but that's okay. But just being around your customers and being involved in what they're doing day to day, how they're utilising your products, like from your perspective, how they're utilising your product within their surveying, within the virtual room, I'm sure you're managing and watching that and learning from that and then evolving the product from there.
So you raise a really good point, Andrew, that people don't know what they're going to do in the future.
Yes.
And so, again, this is where an open, emotional, relaxed conversation isn't necessarily going to unearth what they're going to do in the future, but they can tell you a bit about their life.
Yes.
So you can when you understand more about your target audience and what motivates them, what drives them, and all the stories, their individual stories, that's when you can start getting creative within a team environment and come up with solutions that solve the stories. Uber is the most perfect example of this. So the taxi industry would never have ever been able to create Uber.
No.
Because it just would have been impossible for them to do. Because they would have not gone, they wouldn't have asked the right questions for a start. They wouldn't have identified how people are using it. They're just going, or do you like the cleanliness of our taxis? Do you, they would have known those sort of issues. They would have known things like, taxi drivers get lost and they end up paying, all those sorts of things that we know about taxis now. But of course, with Uber, they broke the mold, and sometimes it takes understanding, and in an Uber's case, and in an Airbnb as well, those who start, they actually were the customer. So they've stepped out because they've gone, why can't they hear me? Why can't they don't even ask me the right questions? I mean, I did a survey years ago in another life, one of my entrepreneurial spirits. I owned a pet shop.
Okay.
And
nice.
That was fun.
What type of pets? Dogs, cats? What's your favourite?
So this was quite interesting actually, because I opened the shop and never ever wanted to sell live animals because I thought that was not the way to go. And I think I'd been open about a month, and I'm going, no one's coming through the door. I'll put a fluffy kitten in the window and see if it brings anybody in. And literally, I had all these hordes of people come in the shop just to pat the kitten. And then a guy gave me he had a litter of Shar-Peis that he's purebred and he said, do you mind if you try and sell them? So I put them in the shop window during the day and he'd take them home at night. And oh my God, the people that flooded in the door, and I went, I'm going to sell live animals.
Yes,
so,
that's what customers want, isn't it, Judy?
Exactly, and that's exactly, you're totally right. So that started on a whole new journey. The point I was getting to is I had a survey sent to me by a local pet shop, about 6 months or so ago. And I know what I would do if I had a pet shop still now. I know exactly, because I'm a passionate pet owner, and that the emotions behind owning a pet are very strong. So they're family members, and so looking at care and the whole thing is a different thing altogether. And emotional. Not one question or one opportunity for me to actually share with her. She did some things right. She introduced herself and said she was the marketing manager and wanted my feedback. Tick. That's a great start. But again, standard set questions that didn't give me an opportunity to explore what I could have. I actually could have given her a lot of insights, given my background. She'll never know that. And they missed on an opportunity. If you have a casual chat with people, then you're more likely to understand their motivations in life. And then when you do that, you could have found out, the challenges that you were facing if you were developing the next Airbnb or Uber, for example. But there are so many cases in history, New Coke, so many test cases of doing enormous amounts of research and doing it all textbook right, but still not understanding what the market wanted to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is a challenge, and I don't think you'll ever overcome that, because people will never know what they're going to do. They don't know what future tech's going to bring. They don't know that, what's going to happen in their lives and what that shapes and what attitudes that changes. However, if you understand enough about their personal drivers, if you segment your audience and understand the niching of your target and then communicating with them as a niche, bringing together that community, you unearth a whole pile of stuff. So what we see in our conversations online are someone will say something and then someone else will chime in and go, yeah, I have that experience as well. And so all of a sudden you have a splinter conversation. And we keep it focused on topics. As I said early on, it's like a topic in each room so that you can discuss that one topic. And that was a big part. And it does, we come up with new ideas and sparking ideas with our clients now all the time. So the customers are part of that. And we also involve them in the process afterwards, letting them know how important their feedback was and what they actually did to contribute to the company's growth. And people love that,
Well, everyone likes to be a part of something bigger than themselves, really. So if we can share some more information about our experience and help somebody else, I think everyone likes to talk about their world and their experiences, and if it helps someone else, it's a value, really. So, quick question for you. Now, if you were to jump on, and you've mentioned you've done this before, where someone that's developed an app or went down the technology path and said, I've got an idea, what would be the first place you'd recommend they start or even think about or look into? So what would you say, start here before you go anywhere?
The first, I might sound a bit obvious as a researcher, but the first thing I would do is to talk to the audience, and I wouldn't go. I think one of the biggest problems many people do is they might go to their family and friends and say, I've got this great idea. I'm going to create, I'm going to get rid of taxis, and I'm going to just drive my car around, and I'm going to pick up passengers and charge them, and I'm going to build a little app so that they can just book me whenever they want. They'd all think you're insane. and you get the black hatters of your friends and family going, you're crazy, mate. That's not going to happen. No one's going to trust getting into the car with a stranger, which we know through reading that was one of Uber's biggest problems that they had to overcome. But the point is, if you go into a conversation and you go, if you went into your friends and family and you hid your excitement a little bit and you go, I've got a bit of an idea I'm playing with. I'd really like your experience of how you use taxis. Do you find any challenges with them? Are there things that you would like to improve? So all of a sudden, you're having a conversation for a start. You're not imparting your dominance on that position. And you're finding out whether you are a lone wolf and you're the only one who's ever had a problem with getting in a taxi before, or it's actually a common thread. So you go from family and friends, so you just had conversations over a drink in the pub and on the back of the coaster, all that stuff. And then you start exploring it and getting it out in a further market. You have to find out what the problem is first that you're solving.
Yeah, it's the real core. What's the root cause problem that you're solving?
Exactly.
Yeah. And always keep that in focus.
Yes.
And even within the team, so many, even if you're a company and you need some procedure software that makes your life easier in the team, even talking to in the team and working out exactly what their issues are, as small as they might sound, understanding those first.
Yes. And
then solving the need. I really believe if you do it that way rather than you getting all head up and excited, and in some ways that was our fault and our problem. We didn't probably do what I do now, and that was because people would say to us, yeah, it'd be great to be able to talk to people, but when we shared, they didn't know how. It was just a blank. Well, I don't know. I'm just going to send them an email, hope they answer my survey. As I said before, talk to people on the street or whatever. So it has been a little bit more of a learning curve. I have a favourite story of the guy who invented the shopping cart. Do you know he paid people to push his shopping trolley around for 2 years before anyone would think about using it. So, well, of course, you remember when in those sort of days you went to an old-fashioned counter and you said, I'll have a jar of that and Yep. So we are talking about, again, early adopter. So, yeah.
That's a lot of foresight in his world, basically.
So on top of doing the research and understanding
key
problems and having that in focus, if someone else listening was going through a similar journey to what you went through or was about to start, what are some of the key takeaways they can try and focus on to try and
pick up their
overcome some of the
technology
challenges
knowledge.
even that you went through before they even get them.
Yeah.
Just a couple points.
Read my book. I really think I need to write the book. I think really next time for me, I feel like I could project manage it because I feel like I've learnt the language I need. But if you've never done this before, you need someone that you're prepared to pay, or you get a partner in that loves the idea, that's had the experience in the tech world.
Yep.
You absolutely need that person that can speak the language, that understands what MVP really means. Because this concept of minimal viable product for somebody who has a dream is different.
Yes, it can be a 3-year development process. Yeah.
And that was certainly something I learnt the hard way.
Yes.
So I would as a novice, either have very deep pockets and are prepared to learn, employ someone and be prepared to pay for them, and stick with your idea and go for it, or partner with somebody who likes your dream and wants to share in the rewards of it if you go that way. But you absolutely have to have somebody on your team, I think, ideally outside of the company you engage. That's and then it makes it easier for a company like you too, I would think, to communicate with somebody who's on the right page, who understands where you're going,
it's more about the process, right? I think you've touched on a really key pivotal point there. If you're going to engage a third-party development team, definitely have either someone on your team or someone else third-party vetting that process, so at least you know what you're getting and you've got some oversight as to what's happening. Because I think people get a little bit lost and they jump in a development project. They don't understand what development standards are. They don't even know they exist. What testing processes are. They don't know you can automate certain things, and if you write code in certain ways, you can test them. If you write them in other ways, you're going to be having 3 or 4 people testing every single feature, and you're going to have a problem down the chain all the time with your product. So just getting real clear on standards and processes is one thing I would recommend to anyone out there that's looking to jump into this process. But yes, if you can engage a team, have someone on your team that can understand and talk tech, or engage another third party that has some credibility that can help and advise from that top level. So
if you're in over your head, don't stay there on your own.
Pretty much. It's like anything, right?
So I would have saved. I don't even want to know how much money I would have saved. So
pluck a number. Just.
Look, if I had, so of course up front originally, when you've got this idea and you've got a firm budget in your mind, the last thing you want to do is go, I've got to employ someone now that's going to add another 30 whatever percent on top of that, 25% or something on top of that cost, and you go, oh God, why would I want to do that? I can do that. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I've done project management. I'm highly organised. I should do this. So, oh my God, if I'm knowing now what I know, there's absolutely no way I wouldn't engage someone.
Okay.
It's like I was actually talking to a guy the other day, and he's about developing some other idea that and that he likes, and we seem to be working pretty well together. And he said, "Oh, you might just go off and do this on your own." And I said, "No, not interested."
And I think that's an interesting point.
I'm interested. So he's a techie person, so perfect from my perspective, because he would solve that huge problem. And I don't. You guys are nice, but quite frankly, I don't want to deal with the engineers and the pedanticness of in this case, in this scenario. I mean, I'd get these emails that would be going, well, that doesn't work if the user clicks on this button and da 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 da, and you're going through this quagmire and this maze, and I go, what the hell? I just want it to work, guys. And you'd have to think of every possible outcome and scenario. Just not my bag.
It's a different thought process to be that
very
detailed,
person.
analytical, and workflow
driven person.
Process
so,
driven.
To give a bit of an idea about us, I'm more of the visionary type person, so I'll sit in probably your bucket.
And
Anthony will be the more...
I'll be all over those emails.
Yeah, he just loves diving into detail.
Or I'm the one that wrote it up and made it confusing for you to understand.
Yeah, so...
But even if you are a process-driven person, it's different in the tech world.
Yeah, you have to have that technical knowledge
Yes.
to put it together and know what works, what doesn't.
And actually understanding, because it's a learning curve in itself. I mean, I don't mind processes. I'm quite comfortable building the processes within my own business.
Yes.
But when it comes to building tech that is not my thing, anyway, the point is, to answer simply, don't even, to anybody listening who thinks that they've got this fantastic idea and it's just going to employ someone from overseas and on Upwork and they're just going to develop the app and it's all going to be all awesome and they're going to make $1 million, yeah, maybe go back to the drawing board and see.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, I think we'll leave that as the key takeaway.
Key takeaway today. So get some help. It's like anything in life, right? If you want to learn how to, if you got a weight problem and you want to lose weight, get someone that's going to help you guide that. If you've got a smoking problem, get someone to help you guide that. If you're looking to go and educate yourself in a business world, get a mentor. And I think if you look at that from that perspective, if you want to build tech, get a tech mentor. Get someone that's done it, been through it. And I think, Judy, you'll be a great mentor, someone that's jumping on board, if that's what the world you wanted to live in, and actually guide them through what the key challenges and pitfalls might be. So if you're out there listening, find people like Judy that would be interested in having a conversation and just sharing their knowledge, because just hearing your thoughts and stories will give you a lot of different questions you need to be asking and a lot of different thought processes that you have to have along the way.
Or share this out to as many people as you can and get the word out there on what to avoid and how to do things.
Because, you know, I really do think I get quite scared for people that have you know, by all means dream, because the world's full of dreamers and we wouldn't be where we are without them. And you know, I put myself in that category. But, you know, if just learn from the huge amounts of money I've wasted on not doing it.
And you're not the only one. There's
not the only
thousands of others out there.
That is so scary thing, you know. There are so many people who are losing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars by just not following simple advice, which is invest a percentage of the project into someone who's on your team.
Yes.
Someone who gets it from your perspective, who understands your dream, who will deliver the outcome and work with, you know, people like you guys that so that you can do it together and make it happen. But absolutely, it's the most critical aspect, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's the only way it'll work if you're doing anything with anyone overseas.
Yes.
Here you can find a team that has that people involved.
Potentially, but I still think...
But if you're out doing it yourself, you definitely need that. There's no other way around it.
You're going through a learning curve, and in essence, you're backing your choice. So the team that you choose is really... They're going to either be a great team and get you the result, or they're not going to be able to educate you through the process. And you don't know if you don't know.
We don't learn this stuff overnight.
No, so and experience.
We've gone through school and 11 years of business to get to the point where we understand that.
In terms of education and uni and learning how to code was not really where it all gets learnt. It's
but that's the technical knowledge starts.
Yeah, it's a starting of learning, right? So we're always learning, evolving, and our business started out as a business that we jumped in and were developers and we started something, but in essence we've come a long way, and it's really about the problem, like you alluded to. It's about the customer in the end and what you're solving for them. It has nothing and absolutely nothing to do with the technology. Technology is really just a way you can scale out. It's a tool. Exactly. So it's still business 101.
Another really good point, Andrew, to maybe finish on is that in the end, the technology is nothing. It's whether it's going to be used. It's really the means towards the end, which is providing a service or whatever it is that you're doing for either your team or your customers. So, I you know, when I met Anthony originally, and I thought, I'm really excited that you guys are doing this and getting in this direction, because it's and I'm pleased to see the evolution of the industry. Yes. it needed a rocket up it when we started.
And I believe it still does. So.
Majority of it.
I can't answer because I try to avoid it now.
Yeah.
But it's good to see that. I think with incubators and stuff that are happening with tech guys and things, that there's a lot more training on aspects of it. But if you are like me, no experience, it's a daunting process. So yes. It's great that there's options like you guys out there now.
Perfect, Judy. I appreciate you taking the time to have a chat and share your story, your journey, and thanks again. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about your market research side one day. So let's have a chat off this podcast and talk a little bit more. But thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jude, and have a great afternoon.
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity, guys.
No problem.
Thank you.
Bye.